When we talk about sovereignty, we think of Her Majesty and the monarchy conferring power on Parliament and on the courts. In essence, it is the UK's institutions running the United Kingdom. When you then throw the EU into the mix, emotions are raised. So here we have the original legislation coming from the EU that determines everything about our fisheries and our farming. Then here, right here, is the original regulations determining EU immigration. And then this. Most of what we make to sell to the EU is governed by these rules.
But is the Remain camp right that amounts to just 13.2% of our laws? Well, there are three ways the EU influences UK legislation: Acts of Parliament, statutory instruments and regulations.
13.2% comes from adding up British laws, British statutory instruments and seeing how many of them are affected by the European Union. But that misses out a whole area of activity where the EU impacts on our legal system.
So it should be much higher?
It should be higher, yes.
Far higher?
Significantly higher, I'd say, yes.
So the Leave camp say 65%. Are they right?
No, I think that's misleading too. What they're talking about here are things called EU regulations. And these are EU laws that have impact in this country but aren't made into British laws, so they don't count in the House of Commons figures.
So what do you think the actual figure is?
I'd say the actual figure is nearer to around 35%.
Just across Parliament Square is the UK's Supreme Court. How frequently are its decisions overturned by the EU, for so many Leave campaigners the central issue?
I think over the last 5 years, Britain has been found guilty only 7 times of infringing EU law. And if you look at the comparable figures for France and Germany, the Germans have been found guilty of it, I think, about 12 times, the French about 20 times. So compared to our major partners, we do quite well out of this system.
That's law and the single market, but what about wanting to deport foreign criminals and not being able to?
There is absolutely no doubt that the EU legal order constrains member states. And yes, Britain sometimes can't do things it would like to do because of the constraints of EU law.
Does EU law trump this? Whitehall, the seat of British power for so long. Well, our academics tell us that it is right to say that EU law is supreme. It's just, it doesn't trump British law that often. It's wrong, they say, to suggest the UK has little influence in Brussels. But a third of our laws do come from the EU. The question for this referendum is whether that's a level we're happy with.